Legal Implications of the California Wildfires, a conversation with Attorney Martin Kaufman. That is our topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent. Hi everyone, this is Mac Pilwy, attorney, mediator, arbitrator, working throughout Florida and Texas. But now I'm in California, specifically in Los Angeles, California, where I'm joined by my guest today, Martin Kaufman. He's an attorney who will be talking to us today about the legal implications of the recent California wildfires that have devastated this area. And so, Martin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Mac. It's a pleasure to meet you. Thanks for coming to the office.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. And so one of the things I told you about was that we want to bring the podcast on the road. So as many people know who follow this channel, we a lot of times record these videos remotely with people all over the world on the Lawyers and Mediators International podcast. But now we have a chance to sit down with somebody in the flesh. So it's really good to see you. And I want to just jump right into it. So first, a little bit about who you are. So Martin, you are an attorney and you've been practicing law for a while. I want you to tell the viewers and the listeners a little bit about yourself and the kind of work that you do.
I've only been practicing for 34 years. I'm a trial attorney, born and raised in Los Angeles. I have a boutique law firm. I was a former big law attorney. I've represented defendants and plaintiffs over 34 years. I'm an AV rated trial lawyer and a super lawyer, which puts me in the top 2% of attorneys in the United States.
Yes.
So I'm familiar with the legal practice, I'd say.
Yes, no, definitely. You have offices all over the state of California?
I do. I
do. And like me, you're a family law, well, you are a personal injury trial attorney, family law attorney, but one thing we have in common is that we have a passion for the law and to help people. And so here you're trying to help people in a different way, and that is folks who have dealt with the recent California wildfires. Can you give us just a little bit of backstory? Because this is not the first time that you've dealt with wildfires before, right? You've dealt with this before. Tell us about that.
So I'm also a product liability attorney, and that pulled me into the arena of wildfire litigation going back to 2007, when on behalf of several families, I was fortunate to be able to represent them against Southern California Edison for wildfires that happened in the Lake Arrowhead Grass Valley fire zone, where Edison burned down the entire region, devastated approximately 300 homes and changed lives. So that drew me into this arena then. So
the Lake Arrowhead fire, when was that?
The fire happened in 2007 and the litigation resolved around 2011.
Okay, and when you refer to Edison, for people who might not know, because again, I'm mainly in Florida, Texas, and so rest of the country are not familiar too much with what had happened in California going back 20 years. Can you just give us a quick, snapshot of what had transpired litigation-wise in this area?
Sure. So back then, I got a phone call from some friends and family that came to me and said, "Hey, we lost everything. Our house was burned to the ground," and we started this investigative process, and we found out that Southern California Edison was involved. Not only they were responsible. They're an arc in their power line, their high voltage line, basically exploded. Caused the junction to explode, showered molten metal onto, foliage, and then burned down the entire valley. Mm-hmm. We're talking about a really nice area. If you've heard of Lake Arrowhead, I mean, it's kind of up in the Big Bear area here for Southern California. It's an amazing, beautiful place. So that drew me into the litigation. We were successful. All of our clients recovered, and so now you cut to the current situation where I'm representing numerous families in conjunction with the Eaton fire, which is the fires that literally just were put out a matter of days ago up in the Altadena area, which is near Pasadena, California. And I also have a few clients that have contacted me in conjunction with the Palisades fire, which many of your viewers and listeners are familiar with, yes. Which is also just a massive fire that happened in Pacific Palisades. Little different scenario, however. Though.
Yeah, well, let's get into that. So you're a resident of Southern California. Can you tell the rest of us who don't live here or in the rest of the country, we've seen this stuff on the news, we've heard people talk about it, we've heard politicians talk about it, but can you, as a person on the ground who's actually told me you've smelled the smoke, just give us a little bit of a view of what were you witnessing firsthand?
So on January the 25th, I went out to visit a few of my clients. I got my 16-year-old son to drive me out. He's interested in law, helps me out. So we went up to Altadena, which is the site of the Eaton fire.
Yes, and Altadena is pretty famous, right? It's I believe during the Great Migration, when there were a lot of African Americans who were moving from the South, the Deep South, they were migrating to places that were supposed to be less restrictive, laws, but they were surprised by some red lines that were here as well. But anyway, they're just segueing because that's a very famous area.
Well, and yeah, just backstory before I get into what I saw. So a lot of people don't know this, but everyone thinks that California is a very enlightened place, and other folks in the country think we're some sort of super liberal area, which we have a mix. It's a melting pot of different views politically, ethnically, and so forth. Altadena was a place where minorities, in particular African Americans, were able to move. They could actually buy property. They could actually create generational wealth for their families. So these houses that were in Altadena were the core. They were really the essence of the net worth of so many thousands of people. And of course, over the years, Altadena became kind of this very integrated, diverse population. It really is just, it's a classic example of living in the United States, right? We've had immigrants and so forth move in. People of all socioeconomic pathways have moved into Altadena. It's also, there's artists, and just, it was a truly incredible place. Now, as I saw when I went with my son, it's a place of absolute devastation. It's the best analogy that I could give you would be I imagine it's what Hiroshima or Nagasaki looked like after the bomb was dropped.
Yeah.
It's absolute devastation.
Thousands of homes or hundreds?
9,400 plus homes have been either completely or partially destroyed. There's another 1,000 plus structures that have been completely destroyed. And to give you perspective, when I sued Southern California Edison in the Grass Valley fire, we thought that was big. That was 300 plus homes, which was big.
Yes.
The magnitude and scale of this loss is just, it pales in comparison. It's massive. It's the second worst wildfire disaster in the history of California, and it's one of the worst in world history.
So the numbers were astounding to me. When I was hearing about these, I was like, thousands of structures. And I didn't know if structures meant cars, homes, businesses, but I think homes and homeowners would be the ones most devastated by this, right?
The vast majority of it is houses, single family homes. My clients' homes range from 1,000 square foot homes, some of them up to 3,500 foot, 4,000 or 5,000 foot homes. Some of the homes, one of my clients, for instance, has a house that actually made it through the fire, where all of his neighbors' homes are burnt down. That pocket in Altadena has houses that were built in 1919.
Got it.
So, and his house is 3,500 feet. It's 2-story. It's amazing. And that house right now, he's going to have to gut the house down to the studs.
Yeah. So for those of us on the outside thinking about solutions to all of this now, how effective has emergency response been? Because I know FEMA's on the ground. So from your perspective, can you explain to us what has been happening to help fix this? The rain's kind of helped because it's been raining now, finally. But what about humans?
Rains create their own problem now, right? It's a blessing and a curse because we're all concerned about mudslides. But in the meantime, look, there's been a lot of criticism. Perhaps a lot of it is appropriate of how the government has reacted to these fires. The news has covered that. In fairness to our local response, I would say actually that they're doing their best. I have a FEMA center that's right down the street on Westwood Boulevard, right by my office in West LA. I went there yesterday, walked in, and was was blown away by the 73 different government organizations that were set up. Everything from the Army Corps of Engineers to the EPA to multiple FEMA entities. Even UCLA was out there. For instance, people lost everything.
Yeah.
They lost their documents. They lost their diplomas. They lost their passports. There was even booths set up for people getting temporary loans. For instance, the SBA was there. There's local levels. There's federal levels. So, fortunately, there's a reasonable amount of assistance that's there for people. And what I'm doing now is, I'm focused on my clients and other people that I'm just talking with that haven't retained me, but they're just people that we're here to help.
Yeah.
And just to help them navigate what is just difficult, because no one knows.
Correct.
How do you know who to talk to? How do you know where to go?
Yeah.
So I'm here to help people, guide them into where some of these pockets of resources are.
Yeah, and you've kind of segued into the next topic, which was legal tips. And so you said there's lots of different organizations out there. Can you just, the ones that you've provided, I'll list them on the show notes so people can go to them. But you're kind of giving educational advice right now. It's not legal advice. That's a disclaimer we always tell people. However, it's educational. And so from your perspective, how can you educate the public a little bit more about what they can do now?
So, for those that suffered a loss, the first thing is you have to apply to FEMA. That is the nonstop, go at it, right? I think they're going to give you $770 whopping out of the gate, but they're also going to set you up on a pathway to see exactly what resources are available to you. And then, so that in and of itself is something that needs to be navigated. Locally, there's also requirements. So for instance, people don't know this, but the Environmental Protection Agency, which has been under attack, right? Mm-hmm. And the EPA is there right now. They're clearing lots. So the EPA has to go through every single one of these lots to determine whether they're safe, whether they're ready to be cleared, whether there's toxic chemicals. And by the way, how about all of our Tesla cars that burnt up that are sitting there?
Yeah.
Or people's cell phones, lithium-ion batteries. They are gathering up all of that now toxic waste that's on those lots, and they're going to take them to an area where they're supposedly kind of bagging them up and cordoning them off. That's the first process that's going on right now. Mm. But in order to get into that process, you got to go to the local LA County website, which I can give you that address. Sure. And they have to put their information in so that they set themselves up ultimately to get their lot cleared by the Army Corps of Engineers. The other thing is, of course, they got their private insurance, which is something that we need to talk about. But
yes,
but people need to really talk to their insurance agents. They should be talking to an attorney, right, to make sure that they're setting up their insurance claims right now. And making sure that the insurance company is going to do the right thing and give them as much insurance that's available to them.
And so before we get into the negligence aspects and potential liability, what more do you think or do you hope can be done in the short or long term to help prevent this from happening all over again?
Mac, let me just say this, that, I'm living with sadness right now over this. We've all lost friends and families. Some people have lost literally people that have died in this fire. Yeah. We have friends and family that lost properties, devastated. I had people that lost properties in these other fires, the Woolsey fire, right, which was a utility-caused fire. I told you about my case, the Grass Valley fire, utility-caused fire, right? Mm. The Camp Fire up north, a utility-caused fire. It's got to stop. It's enough already. We can't live like this anymore. And now this has got to be the example for government and for the utility companies to recognize it's over. You cannot have your equipment failing like this. We live in a technological age, right? They can get this straight. Okay, and we know what's causing these fires. We know the equipment's failing. So what can be done? I think it has to be a combination of government having the will and the funding priorities, working with the power company to do things like burying their power lines, to do things like inspecting their power lines and these large transmission towers, the junctions where the wires come in connection, with the tower itself, right? That's failing, that's causing these large arcs, right? And these explosive events. these are mechanical devices. They're all fixable. But how are we going to live like this any longer, where we're at a risk, where wildfires are going to come through and devastate an entire area like Altadena, California? You know, I mean, what the implications of what they've done is just, it's really mind-boggling. So yeah, I think it comes down to getting the smartest minds that are out there, right? Getting these incredible electrical engineers and planners together with the government and with these power companies, and getting them to recognize this needs to be done, and we're not going to put profits before safety any longer. It's over.
Absolutely. And so from a trial attorney's perspective, can you list some potential liability issues that you see surrounding the California fires, and focus on liability from utility companies, negligence lawsuits, even government immunity? Can you talk about that?
So if I pivot to the Palisades fire for a moment, they have a very different set of situation, the folks that lost homes there. I personally, and I'm investigating this right now for clients, I have not seen a pathway towards a third-party claim against, let's say, a utility company. Some lawyers have initiated claims already right out of the gate against the county, right, for failing to respond adequately, for failing to have water in the hydrants, for failing to have the local reservoir that fed those hydrants operational. Okay, there's government immunity that exists, so that's going to be a massive roadblock. So I don't know if those cases are going to go. If lawyers do what they can possibly do to punch through immunity, then maybe they'll get there. My focus right now for my clients that are victims in Altadena and the Eaton fire is that we're going to be initiating a case against Southern California Edison for their negligence. We have between eyewitness testimony, between basically engineering related evidence that we think is going to ultimately prove to be indisputable. It's going to show that Edison didn't do the right thing here. Which is interesting because Edison's CEO, right after the fires happened, I mean, when the fires were still burning, he gave a statement that was picked up on national news, and I was curious to see it. And this is before I was, the fires, I mean, literally were still going. Yeah. And he said, "Oh no, it wasn't us. We de-energized our power lines." That's false. We know it's false, right? In fact, Edison has now admitted that that's false, which is typical for them. Southern California Edison in these fires, all that we've already talked about, they have a typical pattern. They come out and say, "Not us. We're not responsible. We didn't do it. Look somewhere else." They're even talking about a homeless encampment right now underneath the main transmission tower that we now know from video evidence is the explosive starting point. We have testimony that's going to come into this case from eyewitnesses that went out into their backyard, and it's in the public right now, where there was a small little fire, almost like a campfire, right, that they saw burning directly under the main transmission tower. We've got the other video showing corresponding to about, I think it was 6:10 p.m., corresponding with a video that we located that's now been produced showing an explosive event up in the air on the tower. It was taken from an Arco filling station. Yeah. Thank God for video evidence. Exactly. We also have a monitoring company that actually monitors the energy on the power lines. There were over 300 separate faults on those lines from 2 hours before the fire to at least an hour after the fire. So they're monitoring when the transmission on the lines is essentially clear and when it's being disrupted. Well, Edison said that there were no major disruptions. Now they say, okay, well, there were disruptions, but it wasn't our equipment. Everything functioned properly. I disagree with that. My clients disagree with that. I believe that there's going to be several thousand people that are going to ultimately disagree with that. And so, the game plan here is going to be ultimately to initiate our case against Edison for a lot of different claims. You mentioned negligence, right? And failure to, inspect the lines and maintain their lines. That looks like that's pretty obvious. And the other one is what's called an inverse condemnation case, and that's a taking. That's kind of like, you hear about these cities come and, hey, we want to build a bridge right here, so we're going to take your house and we're going to pay you for it.
Yeah, you get paid for it, though.
You get paid.
Yeah.
Well, this is inverse condemnation. It's by operation of law.
Yeah.
So if your utility equipment burns down my house, that is viewed as a taking, much like if you just cleared my lot and wanted to pay me for my property. So that's the direction that our clients and other people are going to move. And there's going to be several thousand of them that are going to move in that direction. That's for sure.
Gotcha. So you talked about government immunity, you talked about negligence, and of course you talked about a third party, well, that is negligence. But what about the first party, the insurance claims? Because I understand there's not a lot of insurance companies left covering this kind of stuff now, right?
This is just a heartbreak. I have clients that are uninsured. I have clients that are not well-heeled. They're not wealthy people. And even if they were wealthy people, that's their house. Yeah. And they have no insurance because their insurance was canceled. That's true. That's a fact. Personally, I have a couple properties. I was canceled. One of them was canceled. I called my broker up and said, why was I canceled? He said, because you live in the brush. I said, no, I just live in the city over here. I'm not in the brush.
With trees, right?
I'm in the brush because I have some trees, So that's the new era that we're living here, in the United States, in California. California is the poster child for insurance cancellations. State Farm came in just a matter of weeks and months prior to the Palisades fire, and they canceled, I think it was something like 79% of all policies. So a lot of those people had to jump into a program which is called the California Fair Plan. It's I don't know how to say this. I mean, it's highly mediocre insurance. It's not the same level of coverage that we would normally have, right? It has caps. It requires people to get extra insurance things for like liability. It's not covered. A lot of the contents coverages are low. So I can tell you that those people that are fortunate enough to have insurance out in the Eaton fire in Altadena, these people are dramatically underinsured. I have clients that have, like, let's say $600,000 worth of rebuilding insurance coverage. It's called coverage A. The rebuild cost is probably like $1.4 million for their house. So I'm working with them right now. And by the way, we don't charge clients for this.
Yeah.
And any lawyer, by the way, I'll tell anyone, if anyone wants to hear this, any lawyer that is charging people to review their insurance policy, to help them with their insurance claim or FEMA or all this, if that's a lawyer that's trying to do that to a person, you should not just walk away from that lawyer, you should run. Because that's not what this is about right now. Right now, it's not about the lawyers getting paid. Right now is about making sure that people are going to be okay. And they're not okay. This is a human tragedy that we're dealing with in a state that's the 5th largest economy in the world.
Yep. So a lot of people, like myself, we heard a lot about, high multi-million-dollar homes being burned down. But has this impacted just the ordinary guy as well? You talked about, smaller communities, but we heard about Palisades. But this has been a travesty for everybody.
So there's more fire zones, right, than just the Palisades and Eaton. That's what we're focusing on.
Yeah.
There was a fire in Hollywood, for instance, right? There was a fire that approached Simi Valley. There were fires being set intentionally, and there were houses that burned down. But the main 2 fire areas, right, are Palisades and Altadena. And I'll tell you something. The thing that's crazy, and I've traveled the country, the beauty of some of these other places and why people have moved there. I have friends that have moved to Atlanta, Georgia, right? California, your small house now is $1.2 million. If you move to Atlanta, Georgia for $1.2 million, even today, you can get a little mini mansion. Yeah. But a regular little, 1,500 square foot house on a 5,000 or 6,000 foot lot is $1.2 million. Okay. And again, that house may have been purchased by someone's grandfather, and then, passed down to them. And that's all they had. These are a lot of people in Altadena are not wealthy people. And that house was their Mecca. That was the core of their financial well-being. Okay. And to go up there and to see what I saw and to see these people that are in tears, that are just devastated, you can't help but say, I need to help. I need to do something. And people need to pitch in and do something. And our government needs to do something for these people. That's just the reality of what we're dealing with.
So Martin, when it comes to lawsuits that you're filing, how do you think it's going to all work out? Logistically, how do you think that these cases will be resolved at the end of the day?
So, look, there's going to be several thousand lawsuits that are filed. So you can imagine our little courthouse out here in Pasadena, California, or our even little courthouse in Central Civil right here in downtown LA. Those are all going to have to be coordinated, right? We have judges right now that are handling 1,000 cases on their docket. So being able to get court dates and get in and get heard on something as it is without this tragedy is a horrid situation. I think that there's going to be a coordinated proceeding. And then ultimately, if it goes the way that my other fire cases have gone, I would imagine that once we've pushed through all the liability issues, there's going to be some form of maybe a mediated solution. Look, I prepare my cases to go to trial. That's how my clients get great outcomes. And they generally do, right? And that, of course, depends on the facts of your case. Correct. And circumstances. But I will tell you that, if you can resolve things, if you can get it mediated, if you can put up a strong case, and here we bring Edison to the table, I think that there's going to be a lot of different opportunities for mediation. There may be private mediators that are going to interface here in different pods of cases. I could see that. But I will say this to people, you need to make sure that your lawyer knows what he's doing, because this is high stakes litigation. This is not something small. If your lawyer's never done wildfire litigation, has never sued a utility company beforehand, if it was me, I'd be very reluctant to hire that lawyer. I'd make sure that whoever you hire knows what they're doing, understands the process, understands the engineering that's behind the legal theories that we're going to advance. And then, of course, have the reputation and the wherewithal to get the case through mediation, to get that result for your clients, right? Because again, this is a case where people's lives are in our hands, and a lot of people, this lawsuit that's going to be, it's already, some of them have been filed already, but from my client's perspective, this lawsuit is going to be everything for them. If they don't get that recovery, and there's no insurance or inadequate insurance to cover their loss,
that wealth is just gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
And so it's a heavy responsibility that we as attorneys undertake. And, I fully recognize that. And you come to these situations with heart, because, all of my clients, they call me, right? They know they can call me anytime. I mean, I'm the guy, like, you hear about the guy you need to call, at 4:00 in the morning. I'm that guy. I mean, I pride myself on that. And so if your lawyer's not that person, that's not the right lawyer for you. You don't need to be with these attorneys that are coming in from San Juan, Puerto Rico and Florida that have basically no offices here, but they're advertising and people are just running to the advertisement. That's not the way to go. You need to do your research, find the right attorney, and find the lawyer that's going to end up getting that resolution and be able to work the whole process from start to finish.
Well, Martin Kaufman, thank you so much for this talk today. I appreciate it. And it's good to have your perspective on the Lawyers Mediators International podcast. And hopefully you can do what you can to help as many people as possible on the ground locally. And I'm just glad that me and my staff were able to come in and get to meet you. It's really been a pleasure. Thanks for coming. All right. Until next time, everybody, check the lmipodcast.com channel, Spotify, Amazon Music, iTunes, well, iTunes anymore. Apple Podcasts, of course, and listen to this and other videos for educational purposes. All right, until next time, take care.